So if my mental ability, as in relative functional IQ, relative to genetic ceiling, goes below a certain threshold, I enter what I call limbo, a state in which my cognitive ability, i.e. system 2 control, is no longer able to prevent my body's in the short term adaptive responses, to prevent my in the short term potentially adaptive responses like eating sugar, watching YouTube, which in the short term still offers a little bit of dopamine release, but in the mid to long term is obviously detrimental, mostly because of the opportunity cost of doing things like this. And this is what I call, due to inception, limbo, a state in which system 2 is no longer able to basically pull myself by my own hair out of situations like standing in front of a cake and eating the cake, out of watching YouTube, out of watching Netflix. And one of the, it seems to me, obvious detriments of modern day living is that the more potent the tools for psychological manipulation become, the more system 2 override is required to not take part in such algorithmically manipulated activities. One tool that is so effective that it almost shouldn't exist, that often helps me out of these states of otherwise ongoing metabolic disaster, being awake, but basically being a zombie, not being able to work out, not being able to stop what I'm doing, is cold exposure. Now, of course, the entry to cold exposure is quite a bit, but what cold exposure gives me is at least a temporary ability to system 2 override my system 1 responses. Because of the increase in catecholamines, noradrenaline, dopamine, I'm able to do at least a couple of things that then finally allow me to do what is necessary, which is to get high quality sleep. Dependent on duration and kind of a cold exposure, whether it is a cold shower or a proper cold bath, which now again problematically in summer is much harder to access, mostly because the easiest way to do cold exposure in a bath is to use outdoor or indoor temperature and not have to cool the water. And because of the increase in outdoor temperature in summer due to the increase in sun hours, the tool that would be the best to pull me out of this metabolic disaster, cold exposure, is systemically less available in summer, because the increased outdoor temperature also means that cold water that comes from the pipes is also significantly warmer. Thus, I cannot really kick myself out of this state. Cold exposure, apart from being ridiculously hard to access, especially in later hours of the circadian day, because it requires to basically go past a certain mental threshold of activation, it also has a big problem, which is that cold exposure by itself is basically kind of a waste of time. Ideally, one would be in a state where one could actually do work and not need something that is neither activity nor work to only again be able to function. But what cold exposure, at least in winter, if I have it fully available, can do for me, so then cold exposure can enable a cardiovascular